Welcome to the Concours Coach podcast. This podcast is for ambitious EU civil servants, those who want to pass the internal competition, but also more those who want to improve their careers to communicate with clarity and confidence. This is very much a practical space. I'm going to focus on how we think, how we can write, speak, and perform better under pressure, how we can have more fun and enjoyment and build our careers too. So, in this episode, I am very happy to have as our guest Hasan Kubba. Did I say it correctly, Hasan?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, great. He is the author of a fantastic book I came across recently, which is called The Unfair Advantage. And we'll hear more about that and how that is going to be relevant for you where you're working in the European Union institutional space. So no theory for theory's sake. Everything we're looking at in these series of podcasts is tackling a real challenge that you face, passing internal competitions, being credible on screen and in person, influencing without formal authority. And that's something, that last one, that we're going to explore a little bit more. Hasan, can you introduce yourself? 30 seconds.
Sure. My name is Hasan Kubba. Yeah, I'm the co-author of The Unfair Advantage. I did economics at university and I didn't know what I was going to do afterwards. Typically in London, you go into finance. But what I did is instead is I went into marketing. So I self-taught marketing online and started a marketing agency. And then I learned all about the online business world. Then I learned about the tech startup world from a friend who I met during the time. He was the first marketing director of Just Eat, a very successful European success story, essentially. And it was from there that we were doing some angel investing. And through our experience of looking at different founders, getting different pitches, thinking about success and how for a business is the competitive advantage, which is a known concept, even in economics and business. But then for an individual, what is it? And we thought of it as unfair advantages. And because in a startup, the people that were pitching us, it's very early stage. They don't have much assets left in the early stages of a startup. There isn't much. There's just the founders. And so we think about, okay, what were the unfair advantages for the founders? We break it down and we talked about not just internal strengths, but also the circumstances around them, the different things that they have to their advantage. And so we were going to just self-publish a book, Neil. It ended up becoming traditionally published. Now it's been translated into multiple languages. We won the Business Book of the Year award. It's done really well. We've got really good reviews. And yeah, now I do corporate training, one-to-one
Which
coaching.
is where we met.
That's where we met. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And yeah, I help people with communication essentially. My main thing is about communication now, how to develop concepts, how to pitch yourself well, how to pitch your ideas well, how to be persuasive, and the different kind of areas of strengths around communication and leadership and coming across well.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that brings it neatly back into what we're looking at because maybe when people are listening to your first part of your introduction, they're thinking, well, I'm in the European Union Civil Service. What does all this business stuff have to do with me? Well, it really is about that communication and leadership. How can we leverage those ways in which we are naturally gifted or things that just are unfair advantages that we have in order to have a more interesting career. Not necessarily for me. I always say to people, it's not about becoming, director general, which is a high management position in the institutions by the time you're 40 or something like that, but more about having a career you can look back on and feel like, oh wow, or look forward to. Like you're like enjoy your job. You go into work and you generally enjoy what you're doing. You do more of what you're valued for and more of what you enjoy.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know you've got this miles framework. So for those of you who don't know, the miles framework is money, intelligence and insight, location and luck, education and expertise, and status. those are the pieces of the framework which you use to break down the unfair advantages that people have. So the way that I would interpret that in the realm of the institutions and for civil servants is not money per se. It's not about your own money and how much you can put towards a startup, but really about resources, access to resources, and any support that you have that could give you a head start. So, for example, you've got access to training in the institutions. You've got access to things like being even subscriptions to the Financial Times or to the Economist or to other to academic journals. Manager who champions your development, opens doors to project. What would you say about leveraging these resources to somebody who's working in this intercultural institution where there's people from 28 different nations? They're working on behalf of the EU citizens. What kinds of things would you say about improving their resources, access, and support?
Mm. So yeah, you were completely right, by the way, Neil, by saying that, yeah, started off by saying my career went through marketing and then tech startups. That all doesn't feel as relevant. But that's the funny thing is, as we wrote the book and developed it, it was initially the first version of it. We had this minimum, in fact, I can hold it up, it's right here. We had this minimum viable book, the MVB. And this is it. I'm holding it up for people seeing it on video. And you see the subtitle here is Boost Your Chances of Tech Startup Success. So it was very specific to the tech startup industry. But what we realized as we developed the book, and then when it came out as hardcover initially, is the subtitle became, how you already have what it takes to succeed, because it's actually about success in general, but using tech startups as an example or as the main kind of way to demonstrate it. Because tech startups are interesting because they have like such crazy almost binary successes. They're either huge, huge successes, unicorns, or they kind of flop, which most of them do. And so it's quite interesting to look at that kind of very high variance world and how that applies to more normal careers. So, for example, people in obviously with regular businesses, that's number one, but that's an obvious one. But also people just in their careers, even people in different industries. Every career, there is no such a thing as a pure meritocracy. That's one of the underlying features is that nowhere is a pure meritocracy.
Yeah.
Everything comes with advantages and uneven starting lines, and we all have different internal strengths. And just being EU citizens, for example, is a big unfair advantage.
Yeah, right. Not me, I can't go and live in Italy anymore.
know.
I can't go there for more than 3 months at a time in a 6 month period and, try all the different types of pasta that I love.
Exactly. And we were able to do so, however many years it was, right? 5 years ago, was it? No, more.
Yeah, yeah, more than
Whatever it
that,
was,
yeah.
yeah. So the point here is your question was about money, and which is like another way we were talking about it in terms of outside of money per se is resources, is means. And one of the main things that we're talking about is okay, there is such a thing as uneven starting lines. It's not a pure meritocracy. It's not just about how hard you work. Fine. But what if I don't have unfair advantages? What if I don't have access to a lot of money? What do I do then? And that's the key principle is that the unfair advantages are double-edged swords. So what
Mm,
seems like a disadvantage can be turned into an advantage with the right mindset, and vice versa. Like with the wrong mindset, you can turn an advantage into a disadvantage.
mm,
So to use money as a very simple example, or resources or means, when you have less resources under your fingertips, at your disposal, it often actually makes you more creative.
mm.
Have to find other ways. And
Sure.
and a quick example just from the tech startup world where we'd see people who had funding. Okay, so how are you planning to, let's say, some kind of app, an iPhone app, let's say. How are you planning to get the word out about your app? Oh, well, Google ads, Facebook ads, right? Because they just want to throw money at the problem. If you pay per click, pay for the ads, they're not being creative when you don't have the money. You think of creative, outlandish ways. They used to call it growth hacking. It's kind of become less of a trendy word, but really it just means thinking outside of the box and being a bit more innovative and creative about how to solve the problem. So
Yeah,
it's
so your
uh,
your limitations really make you creative, don't they?
exactly. So the phrase is necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah,
So if
yeah.
you have less resources at your disposal with whatever role you're in right now, okay, just think, okay, how can I think outside the box here? What is not maybe the typical procedure or the obvious thing, but maybe it's something outside of it. Maybe it's something Let's say if it's something very digital, maybe it's something not digital. Maybe it's something on just on WhatsApp to make it other digital. Maybe it's just printing things out and doing things, by hand. I don't know what it might be, but essentially it's just a way to be more creative. So really what unfair advantages is about figuring out where your advantages are, where your disadvantages are, and just having a clear audit and a clear view,
Yeah.
and then trying to double down on where your strengths are and
Mhm.
where your weaknesses are. See if you can within your teams to kind of partner up, let's say who you work with on certain projects. And if not, like now you know what you're looking for. Now you know where you need more strengths, or to flip it into an advantage, like if you're not in the right, let's say, location and luck, you're not in the right location. Well, maybe there's some advantages to being somewhere a bit more periphery, not in a major hub. I don't know,
Mm.
whatever it might be. Maybe Neil, you know better examples for specifically for people trying
Yeah,
to
so
do
like for
concourse.
example, people often ambitious people in the institutions in the commission, for example, they want to be in SecGen, which is a horizontal unit which cuts across lots of different, or directorate rather, which cuts across lots of different of the other directorates, and or in cabinets, which are like cabinets, ministers of cabinets or commissioners' cabinets, which have often are powerful places where people work really, really hard for a few years and then that sort of boosts their career. But that, yeah, so the access to resources, those places could often be considered as those kind of places or popular places as well, like external action service. But yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Like it's in sort of slightly at the periphery, as you say, you can maybe hone your skills and then work on them and improve your communication skills without necessarily like being so thrust in the spotlight that maybe you crash and burn. And if you do that in the periphery or in
Mm,
non-consequential environments, then it's a great way to hone those skills or work on them. Okay, and next one I think is that so Miles Framer. Next one is intelligence and insight,
mm,
knowledge, expertise, and problem-solving strengths. And I think that a lot of the people who are going to be watching or listening to this in the institutions, they are often subject matter experts, or they're trained in economics, finance, and politics. They are also expected to be generalists. So some people are more working as they've been trained in administration, European administration. So, what here I would guess initial examples that I think of improving your intelligence or an insight, or rather displaying them to others, would be questions like what kind of problems do people consistently come to you to solve? That would be a good place to think about where you
mm,
can leverage that intelligence insight, that niche policy area or
mm.
folder or file that you're working on. Um, your ability to make complex information simple for non-experts. That's
Yep.
another something.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there anything else that you could think of there, Hassan?
So yeah, I think the key to the intelligence and insight pillar, let's say, is is to think about intelligence in all its forms. You have like the academic smarts, the book smarts. You have the street smarts and people skills, the kind of the emotional intelligence and the social skills,
Mm, yeah,
social
yeah,
intelligence or
yeah.
political intelligence. You also have the creativity, being a little bit innovative, thinking a little bit outside the box, which you touched on in terms of possibly a benefit to having less resources under your disposal. Um, and the other thing, so that's in terms of intelligence. And then in terms of insight, it's usually about spotting problems, pain points. That is a quite a big one. It's like where are the problems to be solved? What are the right questions to ask? So I'd focus less on expertise because that's in its own kind of that's in under E, the education and expertise, which is kind of the solution side. But this is the problem side. This is like,
Mm,
okay, where are the issues?
nice.
Is for the insight. And for the intelligence, yeah, like it depends. So for the role, you tell me, is it something that so for founders or for people choosing a career, let's say, in that kind of stage, or where they're kind of making decisions about what table to sit on, what ladder to climb, you tell them to for example, if you're an introvert, let's say you're a bit more of an engineering type, you're a bit more left-brained, then obviously pick roles which kind of use that to their advantage, analytical skills, back end, detail oriented, etc. Whereas if you're more extroverted, you're more persuasive, communicative, work, you get energy from people, then do more client facing, people facing kind of roles. Just as an example, I mean, it's very straightforward when you put it that way, but it's just basically, I think the key insight here is for your career as much as you can, because obviously you have these exams, and so you have to have certain levels of baseline levels. But as much as you can, double down on your strengths rather than your weaknesses in terms of what roles you choose.
Try to
I think
fix the
that's the key.
weaknesses. Yeah.
That's the key. But then for the weaknesses, let's say you have a very well-rounded, I think concourse is quite a well-rounded examination process, right? So of
Mm.
course you do have to pick on your weaknesses, and then that's where you need to build them up as an individual.
I think also a lot of people get trapped in the institutions because they feel like, they're not being listened to by
Mm,
themselves. And really that's building allies and connecting and building first followers or finding first followers,
mm, mm.
meaning that you find somebody who also agrees with you, sees the world in the same way. Maybe they've got complementary or different strengths. And then gathering a team around you, not necessarily a formal team, but an informal team that want to make a change, and then that's much more powerful than going to your boss and saying, hey boss, we should change this process, or we should change the way we do things around here, because your boss can easily say nope because they don't want to change the status quo. They like things as they are.
I
But
love that. It's
coming
like
coming with other people makes it much more powerful. So
it's like you're creating a grassroots movement
yeah.
and you're
Yeah.
showing momentum already
Yeah.
because you're able to persuade others to join the cause, whatever that cause may be, rather than just going top down, going to the top down decision maker and saying, "Hey, we should change this." As you said, they could just go no. So I think the key is how do you actually have kind of soft leadership skills or kind of lead sideways, maybe lead upwards as well. So
Yeah.
obvious to lead the people who are reporting to you, but then to lead to people who are at the same level as you, or even lead upwards is a very powerful skill set. So yeah, that's a really good
Right.
one.
I really like that. Also, that insight about insights being spotting problems rather than the other side, which we'll come to in a moment.
Mm,
Location and luck, being in the right place or benefiting from unexpected opportunities. So we've already talked about a little bit, like you work in a directorate general with high visibility. SecGen is one of them. Working in cabinets can be one. The External Action Service. There are other places. Being posted in Brussels is often an advantage. You get to meet a lot of stakeholders in person.
makes sense.
What would you say to somebody maybe who wants to go somewhere else, or maybe they feel like they're in the wrong location? Is it that, just hone your skills in the dark, or, the dark, hone your skills in private, and before and look for chances? Is there anything else that you would advise?
I think roughly, yeah. So of course, yeah, you can change some of these things. So obviously you can move.
Yeah.
But it's not so straightforward. Life is a bit more complex. I've been thinking about just personally thinking about back and forth about, oh, should I move? Should I emigrate from the UK? Should I not? Like it's kind of like there's pros and cons, right? There's other
Yeah.
considerations than just career or business or whatever. So
It's all, I would say it's relative, it doesn't matter where
yeah.
you go. There's always some things you like and some things you don't. It doesn't matter where you go.
100%, 100%. And one of the key things here is like, cost of living. Yeah. So sometimes you have more opportunities, but then you have a much higher cost of living. So, simple things like that, or having family around, or having a community, or having a little, you have young children and you kind of have that effect of like the village. It takes a village to raise a child a little bit. You have some of those networks. You're lucky enough to have those, right? Nowadays, we're a little bit too isolated, I feel. And I think that's a big piece of it. So I think my answer is it's a very holistic decision to make whether you want to change location. If you can, then of course do. If the things holding you where you are aren't strong enough, then I think go for it. And also, these are not permanent decisions, right? You can move somewhere for a bit and then come back, and that's
Yeah.
what I tell myself. So I think for location,
Yeah.
it's something that is kind of straightforward.
You also talk about like lucky breaks, unexpected
Yeah.
opportunities as well.
So yeah,
What?
luck is very interesting. So location
Yeah.
and luck is about right place, right time. But we
Yeah.
also talk about luck in general. So
Yeah.
timing is huge, right? In everything in life, there's timing involved in it. There's a lot of serendipity and timing and things.
Mm.
That's one. But how do you get better at timing? Well, the only thing to say about that is to get ready, be ready for when opportunities do come. and then you can
Mm.
actually time it if there is an opportunity and put yourself in positions where opportunities will come. What
And
one
ask. I think ask as well. Be proactive and say
Be
like,
proactive,
if,
yeah.
let's say, you want to do better at presentations, practice that and also ask for opportunity to present and make opportunities for yourself to
Yes,
present.
yes,
Like
yes.
present to your colleagues, do little lunchtime presentations, all these little things. Present in places where you're doing your hobby. I don't know, like singing or improv or other things.
Yeah, and that's like honing the skill. So that's like building some kind of expertise, let's say for speaking, presenting, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
Also, just putting yourself in positions where people are going to, being on stage, you just get more attention and people assume things happen. Serendipity happens. Being on stage, people assume you are an expert because you kind of have to develop a little bit of expertise just to develop a speech, a little bit. So it's true. Same with doing any writing, whether it's writing a book, like both of us have done, or whether it's just publishing just some articles, writing some internal memos, doing some kind of tutorials, volunteering to do a little, I don't know, a lesson or a crash course or a workshop in something that you figured out. These are all things that open up opportunities. And I think these are limited downside, almost unlimited upside type of things. And I
Yeah.
think that's what luck is all about.
Yeah.
Luck is about putting yourself in a position where the losses are small, but the gains are high, like potentially very high. Like the loss is just like, oh, okay, I wrote this article, but no one read it, or no one really cared, or I got 2 likes on LinkedIn, or whatever it might be, whether it's external or internally published or whatever. But the upside is huge. And this is what we don't think about. A very simple example for very busy entrepreneurs, including myself, just to do random coffee meetings, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time, it doesn't lead anywhere. Most of the time, there is nothing I can quantify about what I gained from it. But every so often, some massive opportunity comes up because of it. And so it's part of the whole explore versus exploit. There's this whole thing that you could just do more of what works, which is, let's say, just clocking in, clocking out of your job, doing well at your job. But then there's also explore, where you're just trying things, doing meetings, publishing something, you're just putting yourself out there, let's say.
Yeah.
And it could be nothing, right? But then it could be something huge. And so I think that's what matters. I think you have to put yourself in a position to get lucky.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that, definitely. I see this, and I just think for the people who are listening or watching this, then inter-service consultation groups, places where you're part of a trilogue, where in between the council, the parliament, and the commission, looking out, asking people to go for coffee, somebody who you're impressed by, asking them to be mentored by them or just give you some advice, something you see, making that effort rather than just nodding along in a meeting and then going away and never speaking to them again, where you feel like, oh, that person's got something, often people love to give advice. They love to do a little bit of mentoring, even if it's only one piece of information
Yeah, yeah.
or piece of advice that you get. It could be something that could serve you well for years.
100%. And I've even got the mentoring thing is huge. It goes on in this thing, it's kind of jumping ahead to status because status part of your network, a part of your status is your network,
Yeah.
right? And building a network and having mentors. And one of the key things about mentors, and I wanted to make another quick point as well. One of the key things about mentors is a quick tip is to have specific questions
Hmm.
rather than just vaguely go, "Can you mentor me?" And it's kind of like, oh, the other person, what's
In what way? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
what are they agreeing to? Like, what's the scope of this? Like, are you gonna
Yeah.
just show up at their house? Like, how does that work? Right? So
Yeah.
it's better to have specific questions,
Mm.
and then here's the key to apply what they advise and feedback what happened.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
magical, honestly. Like the most busy, successful people would love a mentee who does this because
Yeah.
99.9% of the time they'll give advice and never hear back.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
So if you are going to take that advice, make sure you follow up with it, you demonstrate it, you give feedback. You don't just go yes, 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 and then do nothing about it because then
Yeah.
they're not going to want to speak to you again.
Yeah, it becomes fun. It's almost like the value to them is it's fun because somebody's actually applying what they say and then feeding back what happens. Like even if that was happening to you, Neil, let's say somebody's like, I just want to ask you a quick question.
Mm.
DMs you on LinkedIn or something. I want to ask you, and they have a specific question, which you could just answer. Like you probably would, right? Like, okay, they're just picking your brains, but cool. Give them the answer. But then if they probably that's happened, right? And then you never hear back from them. You never, that's it, you're ghosted. But if you hear back, let's say a few days later, they're like, oh, I did this, and here's what happened. Now, what do you think I should do? This or this? And you kind
Yeah.
of go, oh, try this. It's kind of
Yeah.
fun now. Now it's like, oh, okay. They're actually feeding it back. Let's play with this. So that's a powerful way to kind of um, get lucky because
Get
and having
lucky.
being clear on what you want. And then something you mentioned about doing, you were describing what they could do and they could set up different things, consultations into department, I think you said. One thing that came to my mind is there was a guy from Shark Tank, which is the American version of here in the UK, we have Dragon's Den. I think every country's got their own name for it, but this show on
Yeah.
TV where there's investors. And there's
Entrepreneurs come to pitch, yeah, and get ask for some money, yeah. Yeah.
ask for money from investors. They pitch them an idea. So one of the sharks, it was actually a guest shark in the US. His name is Chris Saka. Chris Saka, he wears these cowboy shirts. He's kind of this nice guy. He's like I can't remember. I think he's a billionaire. He comes across as a nice guy.
Who knows?
Um, and he used to be just an employee at Google in the early days. And it's so funny because it's such a simple thing. One thing that he did very early on when he was young is he'll just say, "Oh, can I just come and sit in on your meeting? I'll take meeting minutes." He just did that a lot. He just
Mm,
volunteered to sit and just take
yeah.
minutes. And it was like people were like, okay. And it was like quite senior people would be like, oh, okay. I mean, this might not always work, but it just shows the proactivity. It helped him be in the room with decision makers, with the seniors, with he's adding value. He's just being proactive. It's just kind of stuff like that could lead to things, you know?
Yeah, shadowing people, I think of there, like asked to shadow somebody for a day. That's another form of mentoring where you get to see people in action, you get to learn lots of unconscious lessons from the
Yeah,
things that they're doing, how they're interacting with their peers or their superiors as well. So you can learn a lot from them that way.
100%.
Good.
Yeah,
Next one is education and expertise. That's formal training, qualifications, professional experience. I assume that also covers things like training, like doing a
of
workshop
course.
like we did. We facilitated one on communication and influencing skills for managers or leaders. So that's postgraduate degree could give you the credibility in a specialized policy field.
100%.
Um, Certifications as well, like smaller certifications, less than a master's degree, but small certifications, improving your linguistic skills. These would all be
Mm.
things. Anything else you could think of in terms of how do you see education expertise, and maybe that fits with these guys who are working in institutional settings?
Yes. So this is an interesting one. I think the key thing here, especially in this day and age, is the meta skill of
Hmm.
learning how to learn and being adaptable and picking up new skills. I think that's the key because we are now in the AI era. Things are exploding. The models are changing constantly. The ground is shifting beneath our feet. Um, Nowadays, people are using using AI to write a report to make a nice long report for somebody, then they email it over, then the person on the other side is using AI to then summarize it again. So no one's even reading. Like it's like this whole new world we're in.
Yeah,
And I think
yeah,
and nobody can predict the future. Nobody knows what's going to happen in 5 years' time, 2 years' time, 10 years' time. The only thing we can say is that the skill of meta learning, the lifelong learning as a mindset, well, mindset is the foundation to all the Miles framework. Lifelong learning is the key. And the key is just to have this kind of mindset of like, yeah, I'll learn it. I'll play with it. Be a tinkerer. Play with the AIs. Experiment with different ways of prompting them. Experiment with the new features. Understand it. Get a feel for how much they hallucinate and how much they BS. Get a feel for how much is terrible writing and then how much is actually kind of useful and what things would it help you with and what things doesn't it help you with. And constantly play with it. Don't jump to a conclusion and be like, I'm too old for this, or this is too much, and I'm getting overwhelmed with it. No, no. Be playful. Constantly
yeah,
play with it. It's constantly changing. And this applies to everything. I'm just saying it for AI, but it applies to anything. You need to be able to upskill.
yeah.
Um, and I think that's the only bulletproof skill that I'm going to make sure that my kids grow up with is just like learning how to learn because things are shifting way, way too much.
I say, and by the way, I'm running generative AI courses in the institutions.
Perfect.
This is the if you go along to EU Learn, and you can see Gen AI is a new course that we just started with. I but we talk about that. Don't treat AI as an oracle. Treat it as a thinking partner, and it's biased. It makes mistakes, but it can be really fantastic at giving you different perspectives. And it's something you can work as an iterative process from your brain to AI, back to your brain, back to AI, back to your brain, and use it as an iterative process to improve things as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's location and luck, and then we just looked at education expertise. Last one is status, reputation, identity, how others perceive you,
Mhm.
being known, being known for particular expertise, or somebody who's just reliable and quick or calm under pressure, having strong relationships with key stakeholders who trust your judgment, visibility at internal briefings or EU events, like being known for things. And again, it doesn't have to be like communication skills, it could be reliability and other things. Anything else that you would think of there? Like how could EU civil servants improve their reputation, identity, how others perceive them?
Yeah, pretty much all the other unfair advantages can lead to your status going up.
Okay.
You know, you can, being in the right location, let's say where you hang out, where you run into people, where you live. It could be you have a doctor in front of your name, or you have lots of letters behind your name with all the postgraduate degrees. It could be that you were giving talks,
Mm,
that you gave an amazing presentation. It could be you launched an internal podcast. I don't know, whatever it might be. All of these things. And also, what we touched on already with the whole mentoring thing, but it applies in general in terms of network. It's who you know.
mm.
It's who you know. Who you know really affects your state. That's why name dropping is a thing, is a huge thing. And it's just that's how it works. It's who
So,
you
so
know.
just define name dropping because we've got an intercultural audience there.
Yeah.
English is not their first language.
Name dropping is a very British. In fact, in England, Britain, England, they do this whole. If somebody name drops, they do a clang. They make a sound. It's very frowned upon to do it, obviously, so
So
people
it's
don't do
it's
it
referencing
surreptitiously.
somebody's name, giving the name. Oh, when I was with President von der Leyen, that would be
Exactly.
an EU name drop, right? Yeah,
Exactly. It's
yeah.
it's it's basically when you're like, oh, I'm friends with so and so, but you're like implying it or saying it. I'm not saying to do that. I'm saying that's why that's a thing because it works, but also it can be, if it's done inelegantly, it can be a negative thing. The key here is your network really affects how you're perceived, your communication skills, unfortunately, your appearance, your accent, the languages you speak, how you dress, everything, all the unconscious bias, all the politically incorrect things, they do affect. But the key is that not necessarily just the straightforward. Sometimes, you're more diverse. You come from a minority. Maybe that you can turn that into a positive. You can have insights because of that.
Yeah.
You can talk about different things that the regular middle-aged, you know, Belgian men don't have, white men don't have the insight to give. For example, I don't know. The
Yeah.
point here is that status is not just a straightforward, oh, like if you come across higher status, like in every way, it's always better. Often it is, but sometimes things which are quote unquote lower status can be used to your advantage.
Mm.
So let's say you're from a poorer EU country, just
Mhm.
as an example. So maybe I assume there's probably has some unconscious bias of maybe lower status compared
Mm.
to a more wealthy EU country. I'm just assuming things right now. I don't actually know for sure, but this is human nature.
Yeah, and there's even in the EU there's founder states like
There you go.
France, Germany,
We're the original
Luxembourg,
gang.
the original gang, or Western Europe
There you go.
versus since 2004,
Yeah,
Eastern Europe and Central Europe, and more countries that have been joining since then. Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, thanks for confirming what I was suspecting is that that's human nature. So, how do you use that to your advantage? What insights does that give you? Um, that's what I would say about status. Status is something that you can increase, and status is your personal brand. We touched a little bit on doing things which have pretty unlimited upside, but very
Mhm.
limited downside, which is like publishing things, putting things out there, reaching out, having more coffees, networking more. I don't know, whatever
Yeah.
it might be.
I think things like simple things like using LinkedIn.
Yeah,
Sometimes I
yeah,
advise people, sometimes people who I work with, my clients, they pass these exams, not sometimes, a lot, regularly. They pass these exams. I had a lot of people I worked with this year pass their exams, and some of them don't have LinkedIn profiles. And one of the things that they need
mm,
to do actually is they become this what's called a laureate, and a laureate is where you've passed this exam and you're available to have a permanent position, but you've
mm,
actually got to get the permanent position. Now, sometimes for some people, it's really easy. Their boss just says, "Okay, we're going to change your contractual status here in where you're already working." And it's a possibility. In other places, they're not allowed to do that, or they can't do that because of budgetary rules or other rules that limit them. And so, one simple thing is to put it up on LinkedIn and say, show, hey, I've passed this competition, I'm available. People will see that. You're just increasing your
100%.
visibility. So leveraging these, improving your status by showing it, talking about it, publishing things on
Yeah,
LinkedIn that other people see, expanding your network there, or in other internal networks.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
Anything that's a bit one to many, anything
yeah,
that has the potential upside of like some kind of algorithm, some kind of reach, some kind of like an email blast, being featured on a newsletter, starting a newsletter, being thought of just if somebody like is always on LinkedIn and they're constantly seeing your posts, and one day they think about a subject that they think of you.
mm,
It's like a kind of like an availability bias.
yeah.
So it's like building your thought leadership, putting some content out there, building your personal brand. It sounds like it's, personal brand. What does that mean? Well, it just means you're building your reputation at a little bit of a scale. You're being more in control of the narrative. You're placing yourself ahead.
I've seen
Well,
two of my former clients. One of them, um, she has leveraged her Instagram account, where she was working as somebody who was working in climate, but was working in a post which was less, I don't know. It's your beginning job, right? When you start in where you're working,
entry level thing.
and entry level, right? And she leveraged that. She built her Instagram post to talk about Instagram account talking about difficulties that are faced by a young woman who works in the institutions, somebody starting out in their career, how people who because the EU institutions are very prestigious. A lot of people in Europe want to work in them. So she's showing you how you can get started, how you can join, giving advice to people, and leveraged that to start talking to commissioners and having interviewing people at prestigious levels, starting off with their head of unit and other people. To now she's leveraged that not only, but also I think it's not only the reason that she's got it, but
Yeah.
she's now working directly with the commissioner in a much more high prestige position, and that's partly through just being much more visible. Another person I saw recently, one of my former clients, who passed his competition. He's now appearing on stage, and he's talking about what it's like to be an EU civil servant and speaking to larger audiences. So people are seeing he's
There you go.
posting that on LinkedIn, seeing photographs of him on stage, and they're also seeing all these people watching him, which is a kind of social proof that Robert Cialdini talks about in terms of persuasion and influence. So yeah, there's really those opportunities. Doesn't that arrive in one day, but it's something you can work towards, and it might even be not even something that you're looking for, but you're just something you're interested in, or you want to help. You want to be of service to others, and
Exactly.
you're just using that to instead
Yep.
of like hiding away and not posting or talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like volunteering for like leading something, and maybe there's societies. I know in a lot of corporate roles, there's a lot of like societies that, you know, women at, I don't know, some women's societies within like big, like in the big four, they have loads and loads of societies. I get invited to speak at some of them. And it's just, it's a very common thing. And the people that run it, more opportunities come their way when they run these kinds of societies or lead different things. So it's basically about a little bit about stepping up, being a bit more visible, and then more opportunities come your way just
Yeah.
because you become more top of mind and people remember your name. Simple.
I even think of opportunities. I know some people in the European Parliament, they often show visitors and guests around. They got their own job and they do it as a volunteer role. They come and see, invite groups to and show them around the Parliament. Or there's if there's an open day in your directorate or in the commission, you could also volunteer to do that, show visitors around. You know, you're standing in front of a group, bunch of strangers. You've got to engage and involve them. That's practicing skills.
Yeah.
You're also showing your boss that you're willing to do something, that you're comfortable in the spotlight, and so it could have all kind of leverages or all advantages that maybe
Yeah,
you
and I'm definitely an introvert, by the way. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm a little bit in the middle. I can enjoy some extrovert things, but I'm quite shy. I'm not naturally the type that wants to do these things and put myself, I'll lead this or I'll be the tool guide for this. I'm just not naturally like that, but it's helped me so much in my life, my career. Whenever I pushed myself a little bit on myself outside of my comfort zone and did it anyway, it's always helped. It's always helped. And you just get used to it. You just become desensitized to it. And it becomes, oh, it's not a big deal. Your brain just starts to relax and go, oh, it's not a big deal. I remember the first time I went to a Toastmasters, I was still a student. And they were like, if it's your first time, we really encourage you to talk. And I was so nervous. I used to be really scared of public speaking. And I did it and I felt so good. And I think I remember it was like you do a 2 minute talk on whatever. And the feedback I got was, don't mention that it's your first time because you did really well. So sometimes I feel nervous, but actually I came across quite well. And they said, just don't say it next time. And in the feed, they give you little sheets of little bits of paper of feedback. So it's, yeah, just put yourself out
That's a
there.
great piece of advice. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Toastmasters is an organization that I often tell people to go and hone their public speaking skills and their confidence in speaking in public. It's an international organization where you go along and you everybody gives speeches every week. I'm not, or not everybody, but I actually I don't know, but you regularly get the chance to give speeches, and then people give you feedback, and then you learn from the feedback and do it again. And keep doing it until you get more comfortable or and better at it. And that's a great way to have non-consequential practice because you're nobody's seeing you mess it up and get it wrong
Yeah.
or improve
And they're
and
not that, you don't feel,
I
um,
know there's a Brussels chapter, by the way, so you
but yeah,
can definitely join them.
they're everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
They're
I'm sure it's
literally everywhere.
Luxembourg. I haven't checked, but yeah.
Yeah, they're literally everywhere, and people are not that good at it. Don't think what I mean is don't feel like, oh, I'm a newbie, everybody's going to be so great. No, they're not. Trust me. Like it's
That's
fine.
really good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and also they really focus on it's not about the content, it's about the delivery. So you
Hmm.
kind of just go and they just give you a topic and just go and fumble your way through it. It's a really good skill because then you realize, oh, I can just talk. I can just make stuff up. It doesn't matter, and they're only going to give you feedback on the delivery and how you came across and well you spoke, rather than what you actually said, which is really interesting. So I think it's quite
Hmm.
good.
Okay,
Really
I didn't
helpful.
know that. That's really great to know. I'll continue giving that advice. Okay, so we're coming towards the end. What do you think? I don't know, maybe from our conversation or thinking about EU civil, is there any other piece of advice that you give to EU civil servants about leveraging their unfair advantages?
Yeah, I really think it's about thinking about what you think. It's the double-edged thing is very important. I'll just reiterate what I think is the most important thing is the double-edged thing. Whatever you might think is a weakness, maybe you can actually feature it as a strength. So there's a phrase from like the tech startup software world where they say it's not a bug, it's a feature. And it's about turning into whatever your apparent so-called weakness or disadvantage is into a strength. Meaning, like again, let's say if you're from an EU member state that's more recently joined, but okay, maybe there's a slight disadvantage in that in some way. But how can you actually use that as a strength? Maybe there's some kind of insights you have because of that that can give you more insight. Maybe they're looking for more diversity and they're trying to get in. There's probably quotas. I don't know. I don't know how it works. It's the same I say to women founders, entrepreneurs. So, naturally, there's still, even to this day, there's still a little bit of disadvantage from being a woman founder in the sense that there's sometimes it feels like a boys' club. It's still primarily guys. So sometimes you don't feel like you fit in, or sometimes stuff happens on very like laddish environments, for example, and you think, oh, this is a disadvantage. Well, here's an example of an advantage for being a woman is they always need more women speakers. They always need
Absolutely.
more women speakers at events. They
Absolutely.
always beg, like, do you know any women speakers? We need a woman panelist. We're really trying to find women panelists. And
Yeah.
even the ones that we did ask, they say no. So
Yes.
it's just an example of like how what seems like a disadvantage can be an advantage. And I think if you just look for it, you'll find it. You'll find, okay, there's this seems like a disadvantage, but how can I? So, for example, I was born in Baghdad in Iraq. In a way, that's a disadvantage. It's not very relatable to most people that I talk to here in the UK or to the US. It's kind of like, what's the associations with Iraq? It's like, yeah, war, war, terrorism, I don't know,
Yeah.
car bombs. Like that's the association from the news. But how do I use it as an advantage? Well, I talk about how lucky I am that I left, how I lived through two wars by the age of three, how if I had come to the UK when I was a bit older, I'd probably have an accent that would be a disadvantage. I weave it in and it makes me, oh, this is kind of distinctive. It's kind of memorable. Kind of memorable. I'm born in Baghdad. Oh, it's kind of like you don't meet
Yeah,
lots of people.
makes you stand out,
It
right?
just makes
What
it's
you
just kind of something that makes you remember it. One thing we were giving a training to a delegation of Saudi students. I was able to just translate and pick up, and English is my first language, but still I'm able to understand and I was able to use it as an advantage. So it's just little things like just think outside the box a little bit of what you might think is a disadvantage, how you can turn that into an advantage. That's one. And then point number two is especially for civil servants and in that kind of world, very few are publishing stuff. Very few are on LinkedIn posting. Very few are putting themselves out there. Everybody's risk averse. Everybody's risk averse in general, but even more so in a more civil servant kind of way because you're more concerned about what will people think, what's allowed, what isn't allowed. So if you just don't let that hold you back, of course, stay within the guidelines and just put yourself out there a little bit more, then you have an advantage. So I think those are the key things that I would talk about.
Okay, thank you very much. Last question for you. Looking back over 2025, what's one professional or personal unfair advantage you deepened or discovered this year?
Ooh, deepened or discovered. This year has been dealing with with two under two. I had two little ones. So this is like that's all I'm thinking
This is
about right
talking
now.
about children, right?
Children, yeah. Two
Yeah.
under two in terms of kids. No, I had this year, I think, what did I deepen or discover? I think what it was, I think I discovered that what I do, I've been working with a lot of individuals, and I discovered this year to what extent it can be applied to people in corporate or government careers. For example, I was able to tap into some learning and development budget at Google for people who wanted to work with me, and they said, "Oh, I think we can get some of this paid for by Google." And I'm like, "Really? Like, because I'm kind of helping you with comms and these things. Is that?" Yeah, absolutely. So what I've realized is how much this is 5 years after the book came out, and the book has been continuing to sell and continue to get emails, thankfully. Um, and I'm learning now to what extent it applies to corporates, to people in regular careers, to people because I was always working with startup founders, I was working with YouTubers, with aspiring authors, but actually those nonfiction thought leadership communication skills really, really help people within their careers, with stakeholders, with communication, with writing memos, with standing out, with personal branding, with thought leadership, yeah, etc. So I think that's what it is. I think that's and it's a very unique question. Thank you for that, Neil. I've never even thought of it that way. Yeah, what was the unfair advantage? I think it's that. Thinking that's what it was.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, that's a wrap on this episode of Concours Coach Conversations. A huge thank you to you, Hassan, for sharing such sharp insights, mindset, positioning, finding your unfair advantage, even inside the structured world of EU careers. If this episode gave you food for thought, share it with a colleague who's also preparing for the competitions or wants to improve their career in the institutions. And don't forget to check out Hassan's book. Here we go again, The Unfair Advantage. It's really packed with ideas that can really change how you see your strengths. I've really enjoyed it, and I think you will too. And if you want to sharpen your skills ahead of the written exam, take our quiz at quiz.concours.coach.com. Sorry, that's quiz.concours with an S, coach.com. And have a look there to take the free diagnostic quiz. Thank you very much for listening and see you next time. Bye.
Lovely. Bye bye.